They say the loudest voice dominates the room, but that's a lie, one whispered by those who fear stillness. Real power doesn't need noise, it doesn't shout, it watches. When a man walks into a room and says nothing, people take notice, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. There is something profoundly unsettling about someone who doesn't need to fill silence. The world is addicted to attention, desperate to be seen, heard, validated. But when you break free from that addiction, when you stop explaining yourself, when you simply exist, people begin to wonder and worry. Arthur Schopenhauer once said that silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves. Nietzsche agreed, not with words, but with life. He withdrew, observed, wrote not for the crowd, but for those ready to listen in solitude. Modern men have been taught that to gain a woman's interest you must talk, flatter, joke, prove, but real intrigue doesn't come from overexposure, it comes from restraint. Silence is the mystery that pulls her in. It's the empty space she wants to fill, and most don't realize this. The man who is quiet isn't weak, he is unknowable, and that scares her more than 1,000 words. Watch any interaction in a crowded bar or an office break room. The man who sits back, who listens without reaction, who observes without performing, he gains an invisible weight. While others try to impress, he builds gravity. While others seek validation, he becomes the test. That's the paradox. The less you try, the more they want to know. And that's the secret Nietzsche hinted at. The one few understand. To master others, you must first master yourself. And the first proof of that mastery is silence. But this silence isn't passive. It's weaponized. Every pause becomes a mirror in which others see their own insecurities. Every unanswered question becomes a riddle they ache to solve. And just when they think they've figured you out, they realize you've said nothing, yet revealed everything about them. Silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of control. Control over the moment, control over attention, control over interpretation. In a world addicted to self-expression, choosing not to speak is the most rebellious act, but it's not rebellion for its own sake. It's strategy. Every word you don't say becomes a frame they fill in with projection, fantasy, fear, or fascination. The less you reveal, the more they reveal themselves. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this well. In his writings, he warned that a prince must always remain unreadable. He must learn to be able to mask his nature well, Machiavelli insisted. Men judge more by their eyes than their hands. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you truly are. And what does this mean today? It means you don't owe the world your thoughts. You don't owe strangers your story. The more access they have to you, the more control you surrender. Every confession is a transaction. Every explanation, a small surrender. But the silent man makes no transactions. He stands outside the economy of validation. Think about it. Why do some people seem to hold power without lifting a finger? It's because they've mastered the pause. Their stillness unsettles the frantic. Their mystery threatens the transparent. And in that imbalance, they rule. This isn't manipulation in the sinister sense. It's a defense, a way to survive in a world where people weaponize intimacy, exploit vulnerability, and feed on openness. When everyone is busy advertising their every thought, the man who guards his interior becomes rare. And in his rarity, he becomes valuable. And yes, it applies in love too. A man who doesn't over-explain, who doesn't justify his every move, who listens more than he speaks, creates depth. She has to lean in to understand him. She has to guess, to observe, to wonder. That wondering becomes attachment. That mystery becomes gravity. Most modern men fear being misunderstood, but fear of misunderstanding is just a symptom of needing to be approved of. Once you let go of that need, silence becomes easy and potent, because the goal is not to be seen, but to be felt without being possessed. The man who is truly silent is never invisible. He becomes unforgettable, not because he forced himself into the story, but because he refused to become predictable. And that's the beginning of influence. When they can't read your script, they start performing in your theater. There's a hidden paradox in silence. The less you offer, the more they invest. This is not just social psychology. It's ancient. The Stoics knew it. Nietzsche whispered it. Machiavelli weaponized it. When you speak less, people speak more, often revealing more than they intended. And in their flood of words, you find leverage. The man who remains still becomes the mirror. Others project onto him their fears, their desires, their assumptions, and in that projection, he gains insight while revealing nothing in return. That is power. But here's the truth modern minds resist. Silence is not passive. It is assertive restraint. To say nothing in the face of provocation is not weakness. It's dominance in disguise. The man who refuses to defend himself on demand, who doesn't rush to clarify every accusation, who lets tension build instead of dissolving it, commands a different kind of respect, one rooted in unpredictability. And unpredictability is intimidating. Nietzsche once wrote, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." In silence, you cease playing by their rules. You stop offering clarity they can distort. You become your own game, and they can't cheat at a game they don't understand. And here lies the Machiavellian twist. When people can't categorize you, they hesitate. They proceed cautiously. They second guess. That hesitation gives you space, leverage, advantage. It creates a psychological terrain where you're always one step ahead, not because you outtalk them, but because you outweight them. This is why those who speak too much often lose authority. They dilute their impact. They reveal too many tells. But the silent man, every word he does speak lands with weight, not because it's louder, but because it's rare. Think of ancient kings, of wise sages, of feared leaders. They didn't babble. They didn't perform. They mastered the art of presence, the ability to dominate a room without dominating conversation. And in relationships, the same holds true. If every insecurity is exposed, if every thought is verbalized, the mystery evaporates, and with it, the magnetism. The man who is known too well becomes common. The man who remains partially veiled becomes legend. The truth is unsettling. We crave mystery more than knowledge. We respect what we can't fully grasp. We follow what we can't fully predict. And so, silence becomes not just a defense, but a throne. They never respected you when you tried to explain yourself. They didn't listen when you poured out your soul. But when you withdrew, when you stopped performing, stopped justifying, stopped trying, something changed. They leaned in. It's a cruel irony of human psychology. Mystery creates value, while exposure breeds indifference. And the man who is never fully known, never fully read, becomes the one who commands attention without asking for it. Machiavelli understood this deeply. In his letters, he observed that a leader should never allow himself to be entirely understood, because to be fully known is to be predictable, and predictability is the death of influence. The modern world celebrates openness. Share your story, be vulnerable, let them in, but ask yourself, who are the most respected people in your life? Are they the ones who narrate their every thought, or the ones who keep something back? The allure of the unknown is primal. We chase what we can't name. We obsess over what we can't possess. And the man who resists being decoded, who lives with layers, becomes a source of fascination. They don't follow him because he shouts. They follow him because they can't quite figure him out. In the game of power, silence is your armor, vagueness is your camouflage, and mystery, it's your most beautiful weapon. But beware, this isn't about manipulation, it's about reclaiming your agency. It's about no longer offering yourself up for dissection. It's about deciding what pieces of you the world gets to see, and what it never will. Nietzsche said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties. What they can't see, they imagine. And imagination is more potent than any truth you could offer. So hold some of yourself back. Don't explain every silence. Don't answer every question. Let your absence speak as loud as your presence. Let them wonder why you're no longer available. Let them feel the power of not knowing. Because when you vanish a little, you become unforgettable. And when you say less, your silence becomes scripture. That's when you know you've stepped into the realm of true power. Now tell me this, if they only start valuing you once you've vanished, did they ever deserve to know you at all?